Good morning, church. It's good to see each of you. I'm glad that you're here. Glad to have some visitors with us today, and glad to have members, all of our members here with us. And we're just glad to have this day to be able to spend time praising God and worshiping and learning about Him. And one of the reasons, Marvin, I tell people that I'm okay with them sleeping is, one, I was a little drowsy this morning. I was like, I might struggle if I wasn't the one up here speaking. I might struggle anyway. But if you're here and you can fall asleep here, it means you feel safe here, and that's what we want. We want you to feel like you're in a safe place. We're not trying to get you to go to sleep, but if you came off a 12-hour shift last night and you showed up to church this morning and you felt safe enough to be here and safe enough to sleep here, we'd rather you sleep here with us than be in bed, and so we're just thankful that you're here. So we are continuing in week 3 of a series. We're going through the book of Ruth, and we are this short book that's only 4 chapters long, and we are coming this morning to chapter 3. Sometimes when you're reading stories, there's something much bigger that is implanted into a story. There's sometimes history in the making. You think about many of the people who have been born in our world that were life-changing people, and changed the history of the world, both positively and negatively. And many of them, though, were not born with much fanfare. There was a whole lot, you go back and you see their beginnings, and many times they're very humble beginnings, and they turn into something much bigger. But so often we go back to their beginnings, and you just say how unremarkable it was. Of all the births, Jesus's was one of those, right? That while there were some remarkable spiritual things going on, what he was not remarkable in the sense of where he was from or whose family he came from. It was not of great significance. There's a story here in Ruth that in many times is going to seem kind of unremarkable, seem like just a moment. And to the people that were living in that moment in that place, they had no idea how big this moment was going to become in the story of the redemption of Israel, redemption of the Moabites. No one had any clue that Ruth was going to become the great-grandmother of King David, who would pass the lineage on to our King, King Jesus. Nobody understands the magnitude of what's happening here in these moments. But this moment this week, this midnight moment on a threshing room floor with some language that is just kind of odd and weird to us that we don't quite understand. We're kind of struggling to figure out how sexual or not sexual this moment is, and trying to understand this change of culture and context. It becomes part of this grand, much bigger story of the Bible and how the whole story comes together. It goes right through this moment on this threshing room floor just outside of the city. Let's take up reading. Let's read together. One day, Ruth's mother-in-law, Naomi, said to her, "My daughter, I must find a home for you where you will be well provided for. Now Boaz, with whose women you have worked, is a relative of ours. Tonight, he will be winnowing barley on the threshing floor. Wash, put on perfume, get dressed in your best clothes. Then go down to the threshing floor. But don't let him know you are there until he has finished eating and drinking." Verse 4, when he lies down, note the place where he is lying. Then go and uncover his feet and lie down. He will tell you what to do. And Ruth answers, "I will do whatever you say." Here's Naomi, this woman who called herself bitter, and she's beginning to dream again. She's beginning to scheme and to plan and try to figure out a way to make things work. This plan is risky. It's got some real risk in it. It's got some danger in it. It's got some what could go wrong in it. And there's many things that could go wrong. These women who have returned to this city, drenched in shame, could walk away from this scene, depending on how Boaz reacts to it, with even more shame and even more baggage and more hurt. I was reminded as we've been going through this, if you're new to the series, we've been looking at movie scenes and how different scenes in movies that maybe you're familiar with or not, but how they kind of play out these themes. And thought this week about this scene when we're at the end of Apollo 13 and everything worked, right? But the plan, them putting together the plan, doing the equations and figuring it out, there was such incredible risk involved in it that it was like one of those things. It was almost, it's at least pictured in the movie, like this is a Hail Mary. This is the football sense, I guess, but Hail Mary, okay. I don't know if Church of Christ preacher's supposed to say Hail Mary in a sermon, but here we are. All right. So like this is the moment we've got to come up with something. And so Naomi has the boldness to plan this moment where she will sit at the feet of this man and try to figure out what's going on. It feels dangerous because it is, and it echoes a couple of bigger stories that happen, not bigger, but a couple of big stories that happen early in the Bible where men are uncovered. You see the story of Noah who gets drunk and he is uncovered. The story of Lot, who gets drunk in a cave and is uncovered by his very own daughters, who then have sex with him and create one of those unions that happens, creates the Moabite people, of which Ruth is a Moabite. It is not unintentional that this happens like this. This is leading us and wanting us to understand and to pull on those stories, to recognize those stories. And we're asked the question, will this go just like it went the last two times? With a drunk man and him not being fully capable of knowing what's going on and someone taking advantage of him, and from that sin, great scandal will come, and whole groups of people will come who become enemies of God's people, of the Israelites through history. And so we're sitting here asking, will this dangerous plan work on this threshing floor? The threshing floor, the place where they would bring back the crop. And the person who would own the crop would frequently sleep there to protect it, to make sure that nobody would come. But this is also harvest. It's a time to celebrate. And so drinking was going to happen. And in the other two stories, in the story of Noah and the story of Lot, drinking happens and sin comes after. And so we're left here in this moment. What will happen with this midnight encounter? Begin in verse 6. So she went down to the threshing floor and did everything her mother-in-law told her to do. When Boaz had finished eating and drinking and was in good spirits, okay? So he was not just eating and drinking and... he's starting to feel some things because he's eating and drinking, and now he's in good spirits because of the spirits, okay? And he went over to lie down at the far end of the grain pile. Ruth quietly approaches and uncovers his feet and lays down. In the middle of the night, something startled the man. He turned, and there was a woman lying at his feet. "Who are you?" he asked. "I am your servant Ruth," she said. "Spread the corner of your garment over me, since you are a guardian redeemer of our family." This midnight encounter is supposed to feel thick with anticipation and what's going on. There's definitely sexual undertones happening here. I fully believe that this is a sexual invitation that is given in this moment. Ruth is giving herself over to Boaz in a way that he would have been able to take advantage of her in a way that nobody would have known had she done it. I'm reminded of this scene from Beauty and the Beast. It's not as sexual in nature, but it's where she wanders over into the West Wing. And in the Beauty and the Beast story, it has a lot of these little dark movies. It's actually a pretty dark movie, by the way, to be called Beauty and the Beast. It's lots of people with pitchforks and torches and things burning, and it's just a pretty dark movie. But she finds, and you can just sometimes feel the tension. Is she going to get caught? What happens if she gets caught? How will the beast react? And And in this scene, it's the same thing. The language is charged. It talks about this idea of uncovering at night after someone has drunk. And this is the Genesis story, and it's set up for failure. And we're asked the question, what will happen? Will Lot's shame play out again? Is she going to repeat the same pattern of her ancestors? Or, as we're going to find out, is God going to choose this moment to rewrite history? To rewrite history not just of the Moabite people, but of the Israelite people. And so Boaz responded, and he blesses Ruth. Verse 10, he says, "The Lord bless you, my daughter. This kindness is greater than that which you showed earlier. You have not run after the younger men, whether they were rich or poor. And now, my daughter, don't be afraid. I will do for you all you ask. All the people of my town know that you are a woman of noble character." That becomes important. Verse 12, "Although it is true that I am a guardian redeemer of our family, there's another who is more closely related to you than I. Stay here for the night, and in the morning, if he wants to do his duty as your guardian redeemer, good. Let him redeem you. But if he is not willing, as surely as the Lord lives, I will do it. Lie here until morning." This scene that has these moments of sexual charged nature, he chooses not to act in a situation that, she could have conceived a child in this moment, and she could have been impregnated in this moment, and it could have secured her future on paper. But Boaz has the wisdom and the maturity to wait, to say not yet, because there is another who has the ability to redeem you, who has first rights. I know this is foreign to us, but has first rights to redeem this family. And he says, if you don't do it, I will. But he also is concerned about protecting her. He's concerned about making sure that it all works out in such a way that he is protected. He chooses restraint. He commits to redeem her. The movie Hidden Figures, maybe it's a movie you've seen. It's also a space movie, just like the last. Katherine Johnson there, and she does this. There behind the scenes, there are African American women in a time where they were not allowed to hold public-facing roles. There was work happening behind the scenes, though. And their math, which just kind of looked like stuff on a chalkboard, go ahead and go to the next slide. There you go. It looks like math on a chalkboard, ends up saving John Glenn's life, and that shapes history going forward. In the same way, this conversation looks like this private, hidden, quiet moment, but what's happening here in this behind-the-scenes scene, on it, everything hinges. Just imagine the world had those women not been there, and John Glenn would have crashed, and the whole space race as we know it would have changed dramatically. And the same thing's happening here. There's this huge moment happening, and nobody knows about it except for a select few people that are here. And where Noah and Lot gave in to disgrace, Boaz stands apart. He stands as a change to the pattern. This Bible works in patterns. It's pattern, and then sometimes we'll see the pattern get broken. And this is the breaking of the pattern. He resists the temptation of the moment. He chooses faithfulness in this moment. One scholar put it this way: Ruth's reopening of Israel's history and national mythology functions to redeem, as it were, the plight of the Moabite, a plight begun with the daughters of Lot in Genesis 19. So this is bigger than two people at midnight on a floor. This is shaping history. This is God redeeming Moab's shame. Moab had lived in shame because of how their people came to be. It was through just a terrible moment in history that they came to be. And this is the redemption of the Moabites, but it's also the redemption that's going to lead to David and ultimately to Jesus Christ. And so this response, him choosing this restraint in this scene, gives us everything we need to see in a story of someone who becomes a hero figure. He becomes not just a guardian redeemer, as we're going to see to these young ladies. He becomes a guardian redeemer to the story that God is pushing through. And then she will return. Verse 14. So she lay at his feet until morning, but got up before anyone could be recognized. And he said, "No one must know that a woman came to the threshing floor." He's not doing that actually to protect himself in this situation. He's doing that to protect her and the plan that Naomi has started and trying to work through. He said, "Bring me the shawl you are wearing and hold it out." And when she did so, he poured unto it 6 measures of barley, and he placed the bundle on her. Then he went back to town, so he snuck away as well. When Ruth came back to her mother-in-law Naomi, she asked, "How did it go, my daughter?" Then she told her everything Boaz had done for her. He added, "Give me these 6 measures of barley," saying, "Don't go back to your mother-in-law empty-handed." Naomi has to see that God's hand is working at this point. That spark that came back bitter just keeps growing and growing and growing, and she can see God's hand working here. And he says, "Wait," she says, "Wait here, my daughter, until you find out what happens, for the man will not rest until the matter is settled today." Ruth rises before dawn. She takes this provision and this blessing. She comes back to the home that day, a very different person with a very different mindset than the 2 women who came back to this city hoping just to survive, hoping just to find a way. I'm reminded of in this return, the return that happens of this movie that you may be familiar with. It's called October Sky. Some of you may have not seen this, maybe not known to many of you, but it's a movie about a group of young men that set out to build rockets, and they were mocked and made fun of during this time, and they had to go through a lot of shame. But the main character, his name was Homer, and he ends up going on and working on rockets, but real rockets. And but there's a scene where he comes back into town, and he's just got a different aura about him, a different respect, a different moment. This story, the story that began with emptiness, is now turning, and Naomi and Ruth are no longer empty. They're no longer without hope. They're no longer just carrying shame. Sure, it's not redeemed yet. There's still work to do. But in the one hand of shame, they're also carrying around this concept of hope. What once was shame is now being redeemed, and that's powerful. You can see how God is working through this midnight scene on the threshing room floor. These echoes of Noah and Lot's scandal and shame, and God is flipping the script. He's turning it around. And the one thing I would encourage you today, and we'll finish this story up next week, I would encourage you to recognize that whatever story you're carrying, if it's not the story you want to carry, does not have to be the story you always carry. And if shame and guilt and struggle was your story, it doesn't have to stay your story. It doesn't have to be your story. You see, the hope of Jesus that is redeeming in this very story is the hope that if you come to God in shatters and in pieces and in splinters, you don't have to leave God that way. That in Jesus, there's a redemption that can happen that can turn the most lost among us, the most struggling among us, the most hurting among us, and it can turn that story into a story of redemption. Church, I just want you to know that if you come here in shame, it took everything you had to get here, you don't have to leave like that. Because you've got a God who's not only wanting to seek out the redemption of the story of Israel, the redemption of the story of Ruth, the redemption of the story of the Moabites, He's wanting to redeem each and every one of our stories. And He calls us to attach to His story, to be a part of His story. Our story can be the same as Jesus Christ. It can be the same it's the story of resurrection. It's the story of broken things and hurting things and things that have been shattered being put back together, and we become new creation in Christ Jesus as we await the new heaven and new earth. And there is just great power in that understanding. Jesus cries out in Revelation, "Behold, I make all things new." Jesus is going to redeem the story. And you may come with shame and hurt and trauma. These women have dealt with real trauma in their lives, and they're facing some real difficulties and uphill battles. And there's nobody there to help. At least it doesn't appear that there is. But God is. And God works, and God can work in your story the same way He works in these stories today. And so if shame defines your story, God can rewrite it. And if you feel like an outsider, Ruth is the proof that you need that He can pull anybody into the story. He can pull you into the story. What could have been another Noah, what could have been another Lot, but in Ruth and Boaz becomes this redemption story. Your life may look just like another quiet scene, like a scene that nobody's going to notice, but maybe God is working on your life and in your heart to redeem your scene. And the best advice I can give you is just listen to God. When He comes and He begins to work, listen and allow the plan to work. And the plan seems crazy. It seems crazy. The idea that we would be risen from the dead seems like a crazy idea, because we have no experience of dead things coming back to life, long dead things coming back to life. The story seems crazy, but just as sure as God brings it to life in this story, He's going to bring it to life in our story. And I want your story to be one of redemption, one of resurrection. I want you to have the resurrection power of Jesus Christ. We teach and practice that when one decides they want to make that story their story, that we go into the waters of baptism, we wash away the old self, and we rise up walking as new creation, understanding not because we have earned something, but because we have been given a special gift. We've chosen to make God's story our story. He is the power. He is the working, not our own good deeds. But in that working and in that power, we make Him our story, and we get to be redeemed, just like God is redeeming the story of Ruth and Boaz and Naomi. And we hope that if you've never taken that step, you will, or maybe you're suffering and struggling and hurting today and dealing with some kind of hurts of your own, and you need the prayers of the church. You can let that be known as well while we'll stand and sing together.